Some sad memories. Almost shed a tear after watching that videos. Welcome back to Salam Media. It is 4 minutes past 8. I'm your host for this evening, Zakir Daud, and we're going to be chatting about Newlands Stadium, and we're going to be bidding farewell to the old lady. This past Saturday, rugby lovers around the world seen and heard the final whistle being blown on a Newlands Stadium. The old lady will hold on to memories that we will treasure forever. The celebration, the heartbreak, the tears, and the joy she'll hold on to, as we will hold on to the memories of Newlands Stadium. But this evening, we're going to be joined by some of South Africa's sporting legends, not just players, but administrators too, who will be sharing their memories of the old lady, the Newlands Rugby Stadium herself. 1891, 2020. Can we say rest in peace? Who knows? But yes, we're going to be joined by Leila Daku, who has been the darling of Newlands, as many know her. She ran the show at the stadium. I mean, that's just obvious for every rugby lover that's been there. She made her trek from the cricket stadium to the rugby stadium, where she made a name for herself before stepping up onto the national stage as an administrator. Then we're going to be chatting to Putaseni. Many know him, as many know him. He's going to tell us about the rich history that Newlands has and the transition that Newlands went through over the years. And he's going to tell us a bit more about his sabbatical he took from the stadium and why exactly he took that sabbatical. Also, I encourage all of our listeners and viewers of Salam Media to share your memories of Newlands Stadium. I mean, drop us a comment down in the comment section below and interact with us on all the social media platforms, as we'd love to hear from you as well. But for now, we're going to be joined by Leila Daku, who's going to share a bit of her journey in sport and share some of her memories of the old lady herself.
Salam Zakir, how are you?
I'm good, alhamdulillah. Salam, Leila. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Leila, you started your sporting journey at Newlands. However, not the rugby stadium. Can you tell us a bit more about that journey of yours?
Sure. Well, I was at the Cobras for my internship in 2007. And then I stayed on there as team manager from 2007 to 2011. And then I crossed the railway line, so to speak, and joined the Stormers on the 1st of April, as luck would have it, 2011.
And that journey of yours, what are some of the fondest memories that you hold onto of the old lady herself?
Well, look, it was such an honor working there, and making so many memories, and watching your montage before I joined the show actually made me cry, and I had to run for the tissue first and just make sure I'm presentable again. But as I mentioned, it was such an honor to work there. Look, my 4 years at the stadium were filled with many moments of laughter and tears, in fact. And I learned so many there, and it was an absolute honor to be able to sing the national anthem for the first time within that stadium, or within the fortress, as many like to call it. But I think my first game there, which I vaguely remember, was in 1996 for Collegians curtain raiser game, because obviously most of my family members played for Collegians Rugby Club. And then I think my very first memory of watching the Stormers at Newlands was the Men in Black. And I particularly remember their marketing campaign was around Selborne Boom, and all the posters said Crash, Boom, Bang. So fitting for me to remember their marketing campaign. But that was my first proper memory of sitting there. And I was actually with my mom, and I saw a lady on the field named Chris Dunker. And I said to my mom that I want to be her. And a couple of years later, Alhamdulillah, was her. So, I mean, I had many fun memories there, many sad moments as the whistle went and the game didn't go our way. But I mean, I get flack on a daily basis, especially at my current workplace, when I say that the Stormers are the best team in the country, and I just get thrown with banana peels naturally, as Joe Burgers do. But fond memories.
You know, it's quite ironic that you say that you had this person to look up to and that person that you wanted to be. And I can fondly remember, and Lux will tell you this, when I first had my first encounter at Newlands Stadium, Labib showed me you with the bright hair. And he's like, he told me exactly, Jabal Musan Media, that is the girl that you need to follow, and you need to imitate everything she does if you want to be the best in the industry. And alhamdulillah, a good 5 years later, I've got Layla Daku on my show.
You do. That's amazing. That's so sweet of him to say. Please.
It's quite a full circle. But now we're going to be joined by another Newlands legend, Buta Saini, formerly known as Hussein Abrams, who's going to be sharing some of his memories at Newlands. Layla, please stay on the line with us, as we'd love to have some interaction from you as well, because we do know how much you admire this legend himself.
Sure.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Greetings to all your listeners, and thanks for having me, and thanks for those flattering words, Layla. Layla, I know Layla because of our love for cricket, but she's multi-talented, she's so diverse, and she's just hopped across the railway line seamlessly to join up with the oval-shaped ball. I'm not going to say who's responsible for the financial dilemma they find themselves in, but no, that's a subject for another time.
Buta Hussein, thank you so much for joining us this evening. You've got a rich history when it comes to sport in South Africa. When and where did your love affair start with Newlands Rugby Stadium?
Well, I've got ambivalent feelings about Newlands Rugby Stadium. You know, I'm pre-Layla's era, so I'm from the guy with. Still got chips on my shoulders, but fortunately I'm well balanced because I've got chips on both shoulders. So I can tell you, I remember going to Newlands as a 10-year-old. 90, I won't tell you which year, but suffice to say that it was France against the Springboks, and we were all, of course, rooting for the French, as was the custom in those days. All the oppressed people who were sandwiched, shoehorned in behind the South stand, they were vociferous supporters of the overseas teams. It was no exception. I was there as a 10-year-old, and the score was 3-3. And any listeners around, Butch Lochner scored a try for the Springboks, and Pierre Danos kicked a drop goal for the French. Then in 1960, the mighty All Blacks came here with Don Clark, Superman goalkeeper, goal kicker. Wilson Winneray was the captain of the team, and Yeah, and then 1962, Arthur Smith's Lions, 63, John Thornett's Wallabies. And then the Argentinians came. And by that time, we were at high school, matric, I think I was. And the mantra then was no normal sport in abnormal society. So if you wanted to play a non-racial sport, you couldn't go to segregated places like Newlands. So I stopped going to Newlands. And then I returned back in 1991, probably 92. In fact, it was 1995, the World Cup, when we sang the national anthem with gusto, and we screamed our heads off with the Springboks against the Wallabies, and Peter Hendricks rounded Compisi, scored a try in the corner, and it was just delirious. And more importantly for me, I could sit where I wanted to sit. I could sit on the halfway line, perched on the on the lofty rafters, and I had a perfect view. It was absolutely great. You felt completely liberated. So that and I don't want to dwell on the past because it's more irrelevant now. But I can tell you, to be shoehorned in the south stand, it wasn't pleasant. You could never see Worcester scoring a try in the far end of the field. There were huge guys who sat in the scholars stand with beards on and made it very uncomfortable for the genuine scholars who sat there. And I can tell you, I can go on and on. There was a time when we were allowed to sit behind the poles, and there was a cordon of police officers, just to prevent us from slapping the backs of our heroes, which was invariably the visiting side. So Zakir, my experience and Leila's experience, Brian Abana's experience, and all the other guys who, and Jean de Villiers' experience, and John de Jong's experience, it's quite different. And,
it is very different in so many rights, Uncle Hussein. I mean, legends like yourself experienced what you could experience, so that myself and Leila don't have to experience Newlands the same way you did. We have so much freedom to experience Newlands with unity and comfort, if I can say that.
Yes, and the sacrifice was so worthwhile. And I always say that the SACOS and the non-racial movement. I mean, we liberated South Africa by not people were fought for liberation in different ways, and we use sport as a vehicle to do that. I can, you can go on about the Gatling tour and all those rebel tours, and how we stayed away, and the irony of it all, Doc, is that all those guys, and I don't want to mention the names, who sold out, they're sitting comfortably next to us in boardrooms now, without having to, without saying I'm sorry, and I know one person saying to me, I'm sorry, I erred, and I'm going to mention his name. He was Dick Conrad, who played a brilliant opening batsman for Western Province in the Hawa Bowl competition, Dadabai competition. He went to play for Greenpoint Cricket Club in 1976. In his words, just to prove his worth, and hitting, and Timmy Kay, who passed away. They played against Garth Leroux, and they punished him all over the pickets. And he said to me that it absolutely wasn't worth it. He was absolutely shunned by the community. Wherever he went to, people looked over their shoulders. And he was one person, and the only person who out of his own came to me and said, I really erred. And it wasn't even we were watching a junior match, a junior rugby game, and both our grandchildren played for Primrose, by the way, our arch rivals normally, and it was ironical that it wasn't coerced out of me. He was sitting around a campfire and he just said to me, Hussein, it was the biggest mistake in my life. But I said to him, I admire you so much, because there's so many people sitting in lofty positions on both sides of the divide, at the rugby and at the cricket, who were playing normal sport long before, long before normalities. And the mantra was no normal sport, they have normal society. Daki, you from Johannesburg, and I can tell you guys who, who. Bamji, for example, Mangeras, for example, Mr. Sharp, Mr. Musson, the Mawings, the Irvins, Those guys played non-racial rugby, and Transvaal was always a thorn in our side. We played rugby at a ground near the Bosman graveyard. I can't remember
That's
the name.
currently where I apply my trade with my community work at Raiders Stadium, formerly known as Turfu Raiders.
That's exactly where we played our SA Cup games, and I, I didn't I followed SA Cup closely. I went up with the teams, and it was a non-racial sport. I mean, I can mention those names to you. I won't be able to mention, and Leila can bear me out. You won't remember the names of the people you play with now. You don't even remember the officials' names there, but I can tell you that non-racial sport created an ethos amongst the players and the spectators and the administrators. They knew that there was a bigger picture involved. They knew that you took two combis, or you took a combi, and for example in cricket you play the Boxing Day game at in Port Elizabeth at Galvindale, and then you'd come to a place called Natalspruit. I don't know where it is. I just know the name was called Natalspruit. It was in Johannesburg somewhere, and that was the Newlands game. And then you travel down to Durban, and all the fixtures took place. Notwithstanding the fact there were no funds available, the transport system was nothing to speak of, nothing to write home about. But the 11 players and the manager and the 12 men, they traveled and they played. So they were great administrators, and we mustn't forget those fallen heroes, people who contributed immensely to where we are today now. There was a guy called Bali Sali. I mean, your father or somebody. There was a guy called Dutch Hassan, who they were amazing rugby players, and they were, Transvaal really. It was just Nuclear and Bosman where the guys played, and some guys from Vredendorp, and that's where the teams hail from. And
that's exactly where I need to bring Leila to, Uncle Hussein. She's been craving a Gatsby for the longest time in Johannesburg. Leila, talking about great administrators, I mean, you're an administrator currently, and once you were at Newlands, knowing the history that that Newlands has been through and what went down at the Newlands Stadium, what were some of the changes that you implemented in terms of bringing the community back to Newlands Stadium?
Look, I think I had such big shoes to fill, so to speak, because of who my mother is and what a staunch rugby supporter and administrator she is. So I was kind of living both of our dreams, which was a lot to carry. But I'm sure I made her proud, and I carried it well. Look, when you first come into an environment like that, it's obviously hard for you to take off your jacket and own the chair you're sitting in, so to speak, because you have to tread with caution, I suppose. But the way in which I like to think that I empowered similar people of my liking is by empowering women of color within sports administration. I've mentored quite a few women which came through Western Province Rugby and Club Newlands, which I'm still in contact with today. And I'd like to think that I gave back in an administrative point of view and not a rugby point of view per se. I mean, I can chuck a rugby ball quite far, believe it or not, but I gave back within the administrative point of view, and I still do today.
Look, if we even go back further into history, Leila, 1995, seeing South Africa host the Rugby World Cup, and Newlands being the place where the opening ceremony took place. Uncle Hussein, what are some of your memories of the 95 World Cup? Can you please unmute your mic? It looks like your mic is muted.
My mic. Can you hear me?
Oh, just press the button one more time. There we go. Now we can hear. Ooh, you're gone again. Just unmute the mic, please.
Hello.
Now we can hear you loud and clear.
I was just telling Leila's mom, the big shoes to fill, that I'm technically challenged, and you said, don't worry, we'll go off quite smoothly without the hitch. But let me just say to you, and I don't know what the narrative of this program is about, but if it's about moving away from Newlands as a venue and going to the Cape Town Stadium, let me say to you that going to Newlands again after all those years was amazing for a number of reasons, because I could sit where I wanted to sit, because it was an absolute risk and a hazardous task going to sit behind the poles and really sitting cramped up like so. After all these years, it's a miracle how there was how something like a stampede of sorts or some disaster hasn't struck me, because I can tell you from a health and safety angle, sitting in the press box at Newlands, which I went to go sit in afterwards, and just to get into the box was a hazard, and to get out of the box was even worse, because you sat perched on the railway stand on the 6th floor. There was one or maybe two escalators taken from me, and even the escalators, one ran from the ground floor, another one ran from the 3rd floor. 9 times out of 10 I always alighted on the wrong floor. So it was an absolute nightmare, logistical nightmare to get to the press box, and even a worse logistical nightmare to get out of the box at the end of the game. So the exits were narrow, they were steep, and at the best of times you had 40,000 people at Newlands. And like I say, it's absolutely amazing that there's never been any incidents of crowd incidents, for example. Certainly in the time that I've been there. But to compare that to the Cape Town Stadium, it's like chalk and cheese. You can get out of the Cape Town Stadium in 5 minutes. There can be 68,000 people. You'll be back in your car park in the civic centre, which Cape Town, 5 kilometers away, and you can be back at home wherever you are, within 40 minutes. So in that respect, I can tell you it's a huge improvement. But whether it will be able to capture the geest of Newlands, I really doubt that, because you were in such close proximity to the ground. I'm sure it must have been a huge thrill to the rugby players, to have the spectators baying for the blood of the opposition when Western Province were playing, and the same players baying for the blood, the same spectators baying for the blood of the Springboks when they were playing the All Blacks, for example. It's not a coincidence that the All Blacks were very rarely been given a test match at Newlands, especially now in the recent years when the newcomers, the millenniums, were vociferous All Black supporters. I can understand people supporting the All Blacks back in the day. They could never play for South Africa, etc. and so on. But now, why would you want to support the All Blacks? You can wear your green and gold. Nizam Carr played for them. Brian Abana played for them. You can name it if you're good enough. Doesn't matter who you are. Cheslin Colby, he's our hero. And, Pimpy is another hero. And you can go on and on and on. So I'm not going to say I can't understand the logic, because to each his own, and I believe that everybody can support who they want to, very much like they support Manchester United, for example. But I can say to you that did I touch your raw nerve there, Leila?
Just
like
a little bit.
supporter.
I am.
I thought this, but it was ominous. There was a smirk from her side there, Daki. So I thought I touched the nerve there.
Mine as well.
But just to come back to Newlands, it's an amazing. It's an amazing place.
We've got
Can you hear me, Rakir?
Yes, we've got a call on the line from Cape Town, if I'm not mistaken. We're just going to take the call quickly, Uncle. And then here's some of his thoughts on the Newlands Stadium. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Rakir, Ufa.
Alhamdulillah. That sounds like a Levi. Labib, is that you?
Yeah, that's me, Rakir. You called me.
Labib, thank you for joining us this evening. I was just sharing the story with Leila of the first time when I was in Newlands Stadium, when I was still quite a young blood with no facial hair, and you told me that if I want to be in media, she's the girl I need to follow. Labib, tell us some of your memories of Newlands Stadium. I'm sure that's why you actually joined us on the line.
Yeah, look, my experiences are different to the other that are on the line, and quite twofold, man. So my first time, like you said, you were at Newlands. My first time at Newlands was 1977. I went with a neighbor and went to watch EP versus Western Province, and I was probably 6-7 years old, and I didn't really understand the whole dynamic. So it was quite an experience to have that crowd, etc. But that was the first time I went. But when I came home, I was asked by my uncle and my parents, why did I go? I said, no, I went with my neighbor. I said, but you're not allowed to go. So I didn't realize, obviously, that time as a 7-year-old that, you weren't allowed to go. And my second time I went to Newlands was only 1992 for the Australian Test versus Springboks. Thereafter, obviously, I went a lot. So it was obviously a different dynamic back in the apartheid days. But as the years went on and I got into playing and coaching, obviously had different experiences from a coaching perspective, and was fortunate to coach a lot of the players that are playing Western Province Stormers now and larger Springboks when they were junior players under 19, under 20, etc. And I could actually see how those players developed, how their journey started at the stadium, training at the stadium, playing at it, and adding to the history of it. Layla's on the line. Layla was in marketing. Another fond memory for me was when Layla smoked my daughter to run out with Dwayne from Newlands for the Stormers versus Chiefs game. So that was quite a proud moment for me as far as the stadium is concerned. Obviously, people have different viewpoints on the stadium. There's a lot of people with the history, obviously, over the years, and different viewpoints as to whether they should leave Newlands or they should go to Cape Town Stadium. My opinion of it, it is a history. There has been a history. It is what it is, and the move to Cape Town Stadium is happening, and people should support that process, and can also be an opportunity for everyone to listen. Let's support the team from a blank point, because there's obviously, whether they admit it or not, there is part of the society that looks at it that way. They haven't really taken the full affinity to Newlands, etc. The previous speaker mentioned, obviously, people have the support for Springboks or Cape Crusaders or the Blues, etc. And it's for a number of reasons, like you mentioned, obviously from the previous days. The modern crew just jumping on the bandwagon in terms of maybe because their parents support and they carry on. They claim, obviously, the brand that's being played. But obviously, as more players of color in particular, Muslim players are getting into the international team, especially, it's difficult not to support the national team with Nizam Kaza, which you mentioned, with Salman Murat, who's and it's people personally playing for national team. So I think more and more people will start moving over to support the team. But it's also important for the team, whether it's Western Province Stormers, Springboks, to play a certain brand that they can that the people can relate to. But I've got some good memories in terms of when there was standing room in front of the stadium. That was quite a fierce, like the previous speaker mentioned. You close the stadium, it's like you can touch the players. And when you speak to players, and when, like last week before our semi-final, players gave like you guys were saying, their fondest memories, and various people gave various aspects of it. Like, for example, Salman Murat said he wants to play his last game, example, to honor his father, who was also Western Province Saru player, who never had opportunity. And you had other players saying, like Rowan Nel, he never thought in his life he'll come even to Newlands, never mind play for the team, because he grew up playing for the Falca. That was the only team, other players from Cheetah, etc. So, and then also visiting teams, especially smaller unions. It's quite amazing when they come there, like your Leopard and your Eastern Transvaal, the Falca and your Griffins. Those players, when you see them come play, you can see they feel pride, and I think that's what players especially love, because of the history, of the good brand that was played over the years. With the Springboks, good records there, as well as Western Province. But in the same breath, I also think that it'll be interesting to see how the old players from the Greenpoint track or the City and Suburban and Tigerberg had gotten the opportunity. When we started with Unity, there were games on the B, and there's quite a lot of story that we can tell, which we won't share on air. But players had the opportunity from a club perspective. Those days, Tigerberg, Esther Wormers in particular, to Bellville Tech to play on Newlands and have some battles. And it was also nice over the last 5 years to see the administrator of Newlands to open Newlands for club rugby for players to play the President's Cup finals, etc. on there, and a lot of players that I know personally, youngsters, it's part of their profile picture running out of Newlands. So from that aspect, and I'm obviously just touching on the surface here, but there's probably hundreds of other stories that we can share. The stadium has developed over the years. The various grandstands came, and yeah, we can just go on and on. But it is probably sad from everyone who's been affected by Newlands to leave. But I think there's other stadiums, the World Lansdowne Road in Ireland and other major stadiums have closed down football stadiums as well and moved on passionately to the new stadium. And they are obviously positive going to Cape Town Stadium, but there are certain aspects like the ownership, which won't be Western Provinces anymore. They won't have as many suites. They won't. We train at Cape Town Stadium once a week and at Newlands once a week, and our access to Newlands is quick. Ashlands, not Ashlands Stadium, Cape Town Stadium. When we go there, it's quite a not bureaucratic, but it's quite a process. You have to sign in and out, and I'm not only talking of the COVID. You have to leave the ground a certain time. If you book it, you have to book a meeting room. Whereas at Newlands, you just use it. So I think from our side we need to get used to it, but it also forces you to raise your professionalism and your planning and your organization. So from that perspective, the cloakrooms are much bigger at Cape Town Stadium. The access to the field, it's got state-of-the-art facilities from meeting rooms to various other rooms to warm up space in the stadium. In and out access, etc. It's quite organized for players, spectators, management, security, etc. So on that aspect, it's positive. It will be interesting how the team dynamic of the team performs and the fans take it, because if Cape Town Sevens is a yardstick, for us to go on, then I think the team will be in a good space, because there's quite a vibe at the Cape Town Sevens. So if that vibe, like we saw in the superhero Sundays two years ago, and anything to go by, it will just create a new fan experience, and our marketing team must find ways to market it so that fans want to come using the fan walk.
The new energy and dynamic that could be brought to Cape Town Stadium, and if you look, definitely. We're just a bit pressed for time, and I'm sure Leila and Buddha Hussein would love to pop some questions at you, because for those of the listeners that tuned in a bit late, it's not every day we get Western Province assistant coach to join us and share some of his experiences of Newlands Stadium and the changes that will take place and how it will affect the team. Leila, I mean, from your side, is there anything that you'd obviously like to pop at Labib, seeing that he shared a story of once where he couldn't attend a match at Newlands, and now today he finds himself as the assistant coach for the Western Province and Stormers team?
It's such great memories, and I mean, Labib's a legend on and off the field, so to speak. And we've shared many moments of laughter together, and many of moments of where you just shouted at me randomly, but that's just normal. And I know he misses seeing me in that corridor. But I'm excited at what he had to say about Cape Town Stadium and the likes of the level of professionalism that it will take the team to, and in a certain way how it will challenge their marketing team. I think it's quite exciting, and I'm sure that the players are excited. And I do believe that if there was ever a team that could fill Cape Town Stadium, then it would definitely be the Stormers in Western Province. So not more of a question, but more of me just saying good luck as they start this new era. I do believe in them and I do back them. And they are still the best team in the country.
Well, some inspiring words there from Leila. But Hussein, we've got Labib Levy on the line here. Is there anything you'd like to pop at him? Any questions you'd like to pop at him?
Yes, I'm not really talking about the fortunes of Western Province. That's gone, by the way. So we just concentrate on Cape Town Stadium. I find that the Cape Town Stadium, the in-goal area, is far smaller than Newlands, for example. Am I correct? I think also that the width of Cape Town Stadium, the fact that it's almost, I'm not quite sure whether there's a track or there's grass. I can't remember the last time I was there. It was at the 7th. So I'm not quite certain that in terms of the measurements of the field, whether the Cape Town Stadium is in fact the same width as Newlands and the length and the in-goal area, all those technical things for me is very important. I've seen rugby test matches on television being played in Argentina, and I tell you the in-goal areas there, are minuscule. If I want to exaggerate something, I also agree with at Cape Town Stadium's facilities is an absolute dream. The press facilities is spacious. Where you don't have to munch your burger at your desk. They've got a wonderful area for the media, the catering area. Everything is becoming of a 2010 World Cup venue. But for me, the important thing is the measurements. How does it measure up into international standards? Perhaps Labib can answer me on that. I'm not going to ask him about the fortunes of Western Province rugby.
Let's just keep it very, very brief, Labib.
Yeah. Obviously, there are dimensions which you can go to. There's minimal dimensions and maximum dimensions. Like if you go to Danny Craven's in-goal area, it will be 25 meters. So those are things that will be taken into consideration. It will be probably minimal and in-goal area it is a little bit smaller. The width should be fine. The width is fine, but the surface is actually different to Newlands, so it's a more faster pitch. When we train there, we find the players cover more ground on the training because just they have to wear shorter studs compared to Newlands. So it will hopefully have a quicker playing style. I just heard Greenpoint track. I used to coach Esco Homewood, and I specifically asked the groundsman to make it a few meters wider for the style of play. But it is something. It will be international required standards, especially where we're less concerned. Obviously, it is shared with the football as well. Just to answer Leila's point, I think from a marketing perspective, with all those out the field there's a marketing opportunity, especially from a fan experience, to maybe add activations on match day. So instead of just coming to a game 4 o'clock, you can have clinics, you can have activations on those fields, which I think is potential, which other stadiums don't have the luxury of, and it can also be a revenue generation as well as a fan growth experience. So Leila must please send through ideas, and then we take it from there and keep us in mind.
I think myself and Leila will certainly look at making a return to Cape Town and hopefully teaming up and heading up the marketing there. But thank you so much for your time, Labib. We really appreciate it. I hope you have a good evening further. We're actually a bit pressed for time, but thank you so much for sharing some of your memories and your experiences.
Okay, shukran, man. Shukran to the
Afwan, Leila and Boeta Hussein, we're reaching the end of our program now. This segment, shukran so much for taking the time out of your evening, for sharing some of your lovely and beautiful memories and giving the youth a bit of insight into where exactly Newlands Stadiums comes from and where rugby will be heading in Western Province now that they are moving to Cape Town City. Thank you Cape Town Stadium for that matter. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and memories with us. We really appreciate it from the team at Salam Media.
Afwan, was lovely chatting to you. Shukran for having us. Yes.
Shukran, Laila. But Hussein, any last words before we do let you go?
You know, if you really want to do a service to rugby and cricket players in Gauteng, is to just do some digging the archives, and you see the wonderful coverage non-racial sport had when Transvaal played Western Province, both on cricket and rugby, and when Bluebells played Cape Town Ramblers, and all those non-racial giants of the past. I think that they don't get the recognition they deserve. There's little about their history. Their stats aren't taken into consideration. There's a lot of hard work for you, but lots of challenges ahead. You've got youth on your side. You've got the technical expertise. So go for it. I'm not going to tell you my age. I've got the institutional knowledge, but I will share my things over the phone, but I'm not going to dig into the archives. You want to ask me anything, I'll answer you. That's as far as it goes. But it was great speaking to you, and to share a platform with Laila, even better. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam. That was Hussein Abrams and Laila Daku, who were sharing their memories of Western Province and in Newlands Stadium. We're going to be going to a quick break before we're joined by Len Muleko, who'll be giving us a preview of the Soweto Derby that takes place tomorrow. Soweto Derby in Johannesburg in front of an empty stadium. That is one that will be quite a bitter pill to swallow. We're going to be hearing from Len after the break.